You've probably heard it said, patience is a virtue. Well, today we're going to look at this curious Hebrew idiom, Erik Apayam. It only occurs 13 times in all of the Tanakh, and 9 of which describing an attribute of the Most High. But there are 4 times where it is describing the behavior of the wise. Let's take a look. Shalom, welcome to Rob on the Rock. Today we're going to look at a curious Hebrew phrase called Erik Apayam. Erik Apayam. It's a construct of 2 words, erek first, and then second, appayim. The word erek means long, generally. And appayim is a dual form of the single noun af. Af. And af has a few meanings, aleph, pei. But the basic meaning is af is a nostril or nose. So appayim is nostrils. And so Erik Apayam literally means long nostriled, which sounds funny, but it's an idiom that means slow to anger. And what we're going to do is look at all the uses of Erik Apayam in the scriptures, in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew. There's only 13 occurrences. 9 of them are describing the Lord, and 4 are in the Proverbs, talking about the wisdom for humans to have this attribute of Erik Apayam. So we're going to go through all these usages today, starting with the 2 times that it occurs in the Torah. So first we're going to look at the 9 that relate Erik Apayam to Adonai. And these first 2 are in the Torah. The first is Exodus 34:6, where Moshe is given another set of 10 commandments because of the golden calf incident. He had smashed the others. And this is what the Lord declares after passing in front of him, or while passing in front of him. Yod-He, Vav-He, or Adonai, Adonai. Here the tetragrammaton appears twice. Compassionate and gracious El, or God. And then it says slow to anger. That's Erik Apayam. And abounding in loving kindness and truth. That's Rav, Chesed ve'emet. But today we're just going to look at Erik Apayam. And the NASB translates this as slow to anger. And again, Numbers 14 is the only other time in the Torah we see Erik Apayam. So both times in the Torah, it's talking about the Lord. It's the Lord revealing to us his character and one of his attributes. Yod-He Vav-He is slow to anger. That is that word Erik Apayam, abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression. How important and wonderful it is that the Lord teaches us about himself, about who he is, about his person, about his holiness, his character. He's not just a big blank slate out in the sky. He has these wonderful attributes. Now we're going to look at the prophets and the Psalms. Joel 2:13 reads, "Rend your heart, not your garments." A beautiful passage warning us of the duplicity of hypocrisy. "Now return to Yod-He Vav-He, your Elohim, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger." Again, the NASB is consistent here, but it's Erik Apayam, abounding in loving kindness, relenting of evil. Beautiful passage from Joel. And then in the book of Jonah prayed to the Lord and said, "I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God." This is El again, just like with our Exodus passage. Erik Apayam, slow to anger, abundant in loving kindness, and one who relents concerning calamity. So what we're going to see here is that the prophets know the Torah. They know God's character. Nahum 1:3, the same. He knows the Torah as well, of course. Nahum the prophet, Yod-He Vav-He is slow to anger. There it is, Erik Apayam. It's the first one listed. Great in power And Yod He Vav He will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. In whirlwind and storm is his way, and clouds are the dust beneath his feet. What wonderful poetry. Then we're going to look to the Psalms. Several Psalms address the Lord, drawing on the same language from the Torah. Psalm 86:15, but you, O Lord, and here, this is the word Adonai, Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yod, not the tetragrammaton, but you, O Adonai, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, erek apayim, and abundant in loving kindness and truth. Again, right out of the Torah, Rav Chesed ve'emet. Psalm 103:8, Yod He Vav He is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger. That's Erik Apayam, and abounding in loving kindness. So Erik Apayam, we can think of that in terms of the physiological feeling of being angry. We've all been very angry before, I'm sure, and it's associated with deep and really strong breathing through the nostrils of someone who's really angry and upset. But Erik Apayam, it is the idiom to describe the capacity to indulge, or the capacity to permit something to transpire, or someone even in sin, and to not react out of anger, but to have long suffering. Another way this is translated is long suffering. So they use the word long there for erek. And then they take apayim, nostrils, as suffering, long suffering. Patient is another translation you might see for Erik Apayam. And these are all accurate translations. They're helpful. But I wanted to get at the idiom itself, Erik Apayam, so you could kind of get a sense of that physiological reality behind the Hebrew idiom. Another Psalm, 145:8, almost the same thing. Yod He Vav He is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and great in loving kindness. Erik Apayam here, slow to anger. And then last of the prophets is Nehemiah 9:17. But you are a God of forgiveness, gracious and compassionate, slow to anger. That's Erik Apayam. Abounding in loving kindness, you did not forsake them. Talking about, in spite of Israel's sin and in spite of them complaining time and time again in the wilderness, he did not leave them. He did not abandon them. He saw Israel to the promised land under Joshua and Caleb's leadership, of course. Now, those were the 9 occurrences where it's talking about the Lord. Well, guess what? The Proverbs don't use Erik Apayam to talk about the Lord at all. In the Proverbs, the remaining 4 of the 13 occurrences of Erik Apayam in all the Tanakh only address the attitude or attribute of people. So Proverbs 14:29. He who is Erik Apayam has great understanding, but he who is quick-tempered exalts folly. So here we have slow to anger in contrast with quick-tempered, which helps us get a sense of its meaning. That's the first. The next and final 3 are from Proverbs 15, 16, and 25. The first we see here is a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is Erik Apayam calms a dispute. So this is now people, right? God's people are to have this character trait. 16:32, he who is Erik Apayam is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who captures a city. This is beautiful. Rules his spirit. Moshel berucho. That's someone who is ruler over his Ruach. Well, Ruach here, in parallel with Erik Apayam, again, reinforces the idea of someone who rules over his breath. You know, how many times do they teach you when you're a kid that if you get upset, you go and you count. You count to 10, right? And breathe and calm down. That's all this is talking about. So the one who is Moshel Berucho, who rules his Ruach, that's what it's talking about. It's someone who can stay calm and not be in a frantic state of upset or rage or alarm, but can keep his, as we say in English idiom, keep his wits or her wits about them. And then the last occurrence here is Proverbs 25:15. And strangely, this is the one place where the NASB does not translate it slow to anger. They have, by forbearance, a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue breaks the bone. So it was difficult for them to hold on to their tradition here. Slow to anger, slow to anger. Here it would say by slow to anger, a ruler may be persuaded. See, it doesn't fit. But Erik Apayam, it says, by patience, maybe, by forbearance, another good translation. But in Hebrew, it's Erik Apayam. So here we've now reviewed all of the 13 times, and we can remember 2 of them are in the Torah. Then we have another 7 in the prophets and in the Psalms. And then the final 4 are here in Proverbs. And the difference between the first 9 and these 4 is that the others only talk about the Lord as being Erik Apayam 9 times. And then in the Proverbs, however, there's no time where it's used to describe Adonai, only these 4 times to talk about a man or a woman. It's just a person who is able to have Erik Apayam and to stay calm in these situations. While I was reflecting on this, I was reminded of a wonderful passage from the epistle of James. In chapter 1, 19 and 20, he says, "But everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not achieve or does not produce, like fruit, the righteousness of God." So if we're in Messiah, we are trained and disciplined, and it's our heart's desire to produce the fruits of the Spirit and to receive that pruning that the Father gives us in our life as we obtain more wisdom and understanding and more discernment so that we could be more fruitful. And so the righteousness of God is one of the fruits that believers bring into the world. But what James is telling us here, Yaakov is telling us, that being quick to hear and slow to speak and slow to anger, those are good shorthand reminders for us. And then just the important reminder, the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. So when someone behaves out of a rage and anger, there's just no way that they're going to achieve the righteousness of God or produce. I don't like this translation, achieve here. They're not going to produce, in terms of fruit, the righteousness of God. So on this meditation on Erik Apayam, I hope this has given you some food for thought to take and reflect, and you can reflect about your own attitudes, times that you feel where you've gotten angry, things that make you angry, and pray about those things. And you can pray that the Lord would guide you in cultivating Erik Apayam. Shalom.